Hello, this is the Unit 3 virtual preview. What we're about to go into is the decimal and fractions operations unit. The key concept for this unit is going to be relationships because scholars will need to understand the relationship between fractions and decimals. Fractions and decimals have a relationship that is evident in the real world through discounts, money, and several other forms. The related concept for this unit will be equivalence and model. Throughout the unit, scholars will learn how the numbers can change their form but are still equivalent. In Unit 3, scholars will also be depicting a real life event to understand how decimals relate to them in the real world. This event will be the Winter Celebration Project, later discussed in the virtual preview. The global context for this unit, Unit 3, will be personal and cultural expression. Scholars learn throughout the unit how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide fractions and decimals by using real world data from around the world. For example, cultural data that will be analyzed are population growth and financial data of various countries. The statement of inquiry ties the key concept, related concept, and global context together to form the statement that is culture is a collaborative effort to model equal relationships to reach a goal. Moving into the inquiry questions, discussing factual questions are an example of some factual questions for Unit 3 are: what is a reciprocal? What is an improper fraction? And what is a mixed number? Moving into our conceptual questions, the conceptual questions will be used to check for understanding of conceptual knowledge and how fractions and decimals work. Last but not least, with our inquiry questions is the debatable questions. The debatable questions for Unit 3 lend themselves towards discussions that help scholars understand what are relationships between different things and how they really matter. Hopefully, through thinking about real-world situations, scholars will be able to form a conclusion of how important the relationship between decimals and fractions really are. In our essential understandings, we have the TEKS, standards, and vocabulary. The TEKS are the focal points that will be STAR tested based off readiness and supporting standards. There are some TEKS that build off of Unit 1 and Unit 2, so it is important to ensure that the math fluency and review of concepts that were taught in previous units happen on a daily basis. The vocabulary is also important because it builds mathematical comprehension when scholars see word problems. The scholars will know and scholars will be able be skilled at portion are the day-to-day things that we want scholars to know and be able to articulate at the end of the unit. The skills that scholars will need to know in Unit 3 because they are transferable throughout the rest of the school year. These skills also show up in Unit 4, proportional relationships, and also Unit 5. The interdisciplinary connections for this unit will be most evident in the unit for language and literature, individual society, sciences, and technology, though math lends itself to be used through other classes as well. Individuals and societies and science will be big interdisciplinary connections for Unit 4. During this unit, scholars will be learning about different cultures through the lenses of math by using computation and examine the difference and similarities of culture. Science will be using many measurements that include both long division and fractions. Getting hands-on experience with fractions and decimals will enhance their conceptual understanding of these amounts. In Unit 3, there will be assessment for a test and a unit project. The Unit 3 GRASS project will be a winter celebration. The goal is that scholars will raise $200 to spend on a winter celebration. Scholars must first document how many people will be needed in order to raise money and then decide how they will successfully feed everyone at the winter celebration. This project deals heavily with fractions and decimals while bringing the real life aspect of dealing with something that is tangible. The rubric will be still scaled on a 1 to 8 level, 8 being the highest score that scholars can receive. As we move forward, there's 2 different criteria that we'll be testing for. We'll have criterion C, which is communication, and then we'll have criterion D, which is applying mathematics to a real life context, which leads us to our backwards planning. Last but not least, we have stage 3, the backwards planning. The approaches to learning are thinking and reflecting. The reason why these are used is because scholars will have to think about the necessary steps of solving for decimals and fractions and then reflect on previously taught material from previous units. Learning experiences and teaching strategies are a day-to-day way in which I will be teaching the content. If you have any questions about how to do an activity, please reach out and let me know. It is important that we differentiate for scholars. So the use of manipulatives like strip tiles and models of place values can be located in the back of Scholar books to help teachers and scholars. Also pre-teach place values of decimals and fractions, because on the CA, scholars will see 333,000 repeating represented as a fraction of 3 over 10, or also as a fraction of 1 over 3. And that 5 over 6 is considered 5/6, and 95 hundredths is also written out as 95 hundredths. The formative assessment for Unit 2 are exit tickets, quizzes, and tests. The summary of real-world connections, these are various ways in which you can connect the material to the real world in everyday life. Next, we have some resources that are great use throughout the year. As you can see, you also have anchor charts that would be great to illustrate within the classroom so scholars can have a visual of what is required and how to actually use formulas and how to convert from one thing to another, or multiply, divide, and add. Which leads us to our last point of stage 3, which is our backwards planning. In the backwards planning, each day gives a summary for what will be taught throughout the year and how to teach each portion of the material. This is a way to stay on track with the scope and sequence and how I will teach the material in my classes. Also provided are daily assessments with answers provided below as well. At the end is the reflection for the teachers to complete, so the teachers can analyze what worked and what did not work, so that we can always work towards improving the craft of teaching. Prior to teaching this unit, the planning in Unit 3 for me is to have scholars first understand the proper procedures of adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, and converting fractions, and then move into the same skills for decimals. Fractions tend to be harder topic for scholars to understand, so this portion of the unit should be intentionally taught to ensure that scholars have success with higher levels of math. This is important because scholars will see the same levels of math within 7th grade math. They also will see it within their algebra classes, geometry, and so on throughout the progression of their mathematical careers. That concludes the Unit 3 virtual preview. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Have a good unit, and please let me know if you have any questions or feedback.